Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Monday Night Travel with Rick Steves Europe. I'm Lisa Friend, and I'm delighted to be your moderator this evening as we explore the stunning landscape of Iceland. Now, please, put your travel dreams in the upright and locked position as I have the pleasure to introduce our host for the evening, Rick Steves. Hey, Rick.
Lisa, thanks for the good introduction, and thanks to all of you for tuning in for this special Monday Night Travel. Actually, I think every Monday Night Travel is special, and I enjoy the opportunity to drop in and share what I've been doing lately with travel. And today, it's all about Iceland. It has for many years occurred to me that there needs to be a good, solid, thoughtful coverage of Iceland. And that was a great challenge for us, is to write an entertaining show, but a show that also in one beautiful cohesive hour, 6,000 words, shared a look at not just Reykjavik and the Golden Circle, but the entire island. And we did it. It was kind of a natural. First of all, it's really popular. Everybody's excited about Iceland, and understandably so. We've got an abundance of experts on our staff about Iceland. Our good friend Ian Watson, who for many years has been on our crew, tour guiding and updating our guidebooks. He was living in Iceland for many years, and he was critical for us writing our guidebook, the Rick Steves Iceland book, that right out of the gate became one of our best-selling books, rivaling Paris and Spain and Greece. And also Cameron Hewitt, who's in so many ways my right-hand man in opening up new territory. Cameron is enthusiastic about Iceland, and he just knows Iceland up and down. So we had what it takes. We wrote a great guidebook. We have a huge and enthusiastic market. And of course, thanks to public broadcasting, we're able to put this together and share it with our whole nation. And I'm just so excited right now to share with you our 1 hour look at Iceland. Just this last week or so, it's dropped all over the country. It's airing on public television stations. You can always watch it on PBS Passport app. You can always watch it on our website, but you can never otherwise watch it with me and Cameron telling you a little behind the scenes look at what's going on and then answering your questions at the end, except for right now. Or as Lisa reminded us, we can see it recorded a little while later. Right now, I want to introduce my good buddy, Cameron Hewitt. Cameron, thanks for being here.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me.
And Cameron, what a dream it was for us to put this together, wasn't it?
It was definitely something that was a very long time coming.
Well, long time coming because of something called COVID. I mean, like 5 years ago, we had everything booked, didn't we?
We had all the plans made early 2020. We were getting the permissions in the hotels. And then, of course, like everything else in 2020, that didn't happen. And it took us a good 3 years before we actually got to hit the field again with that script.
And I remember when we scuttled our plans, we had Iceland and Poland, two places near and dear to your heart, all ready to go. We had our reservations, we had our local guides, we had great scripts. We were going to do 2 beautiful hours. And I remember during the dark depths of COVID, you asked me, we're not going to let these fade away, are we? And, I tried to put on a positive, we'll get through this pandemic and we'll do it, Cameron. But I wasn't sure. And I'll tell you, just like you, I'm so thankful that we were able to do it. And it was just really fun. We did it, I believe it was one shoot. We did Iceland and then Poland, didn't we?
Yeah, both in the same year within a couple months of each other. It was a very busy summer.
Oh, man. And right now, our editor, Steve Camerano, is working on Poland. So we'll be able to share Poland, you and me, coming up in the near future. But this evening is all about Iceland. This particular shoot, I think it probably took more time than any other hour we've shot. How many days do you figure the whole shoot lasted?
I just counted it up today. I think it was 18 days for 2 shows or for a 1 hour episode. How long would you normally spend for
probably 12 days or 13 days on a show.
So this was, 50% more than it probably would have normally.
Probably 4 times the amount of miles covered easily on a typical show. What's the ring road? Going all the way around the island?
800 miles. Yeah, we wanted to do the whole island, 800 miles of driving. So right there, it's 30 hours of driving, just driving without stopping to get all the great footage and stuff.
Well, we're gonna be interrupting the show for the next hour, so you and I can give a little stories and practical tips and so on. And we do want to remind people to see the show really without all the breaks. You can anytime go to ricksteves.com, go into the travel section, into the TV section, and just one click, it's free, and you can watch the show without interruptions. But Cameron, I'm so thankful that you're here with us right now to share a little bit of the process. And right now, before we jump in, anything you would say as the co-producer and author of the script to look for as we go to Iceland together?
Yeah, I think our challenge was you have a lot of expectations with Iceland. We wanted to hit all the big famous stuff, the cliches. Of course, we had to cover the puffins, as well as the glaciers and the volcanoes and all the things you expect with Iceland. But with an hour, we actually had an opportunity to go beyond all the cliches. So I really want you all to watch we really tried to delve deep into the culture. Iceland has a distinctive, really fascinating culture that's based in Scandinavian culture. Really wonderful people as well. And we really wanted to include a lot of local voices in the show on top of Rick running around and telling everyone what he knows. We really wanted a chance to hear from local people telling their point of view. And I think we succeeded, but watch for our efforts to balance the cliches and the more in-depth look at Iceland.
That was a script writing challenge, and I enjoy it. You and I get those hours after the camera's down and the crews had their dinner to kind of hammer away at that script and make sure we got that balance of lots of practical information and also watchability and entertaining. So I hope that we managed to do that. Let's take a look at this show. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Rick Steves on the wild and western fringe of Europe. It's Iceland, the land of thunderous waterfalls, fiery volcanoes, and the midnight sun. With a resilient culture and epic natural thrills, we'll see why this little island is so dang popular. Thanks for joining us. To fully experience Iceland, we start in the capital city, Reykjavik. Then we day trip deep into the blustery interior to sample the power of nature on the famed Golden Circle. And then we do the epic road trip, Iceland's 800-mile ring road circling this unforgettable island.
Reykjavik, with its landmark church, ruddy urban charm, and determined cultural life, is our springboard. After soaking with the locals in a thermal pool and enjoying an Icelandic feast, we do the famous Golden Circle day trip. We'll see the gorge where Europe meets America, thrill under the original geyser, and feel the spray of a thundering waterfall. Then we hit the road, the ring road, and circle the entire island. With help from Cameron Hewitt, my friend and fellow guidebook author, we'll do it all, exploring waterfalls, hiking through steaming geothermal fields, cruising lagoons bobbing with icebergs, fording glacial rivers, gathering eggs local style, and wandering evocative black sand beaches. We'll chase rainbows, elusive whales, roaming horses, and the cutest puffins. Iceland, about the size of Virginia with just 400,000 people, sits between Greenland and Norway. From Reykjavik, after the Golden Circle day trip, we hit the ring road. We explore the south coast, side-tripping up Thorsmork Valley and sailing to the Westman Islands. After Vik, we see glacial lagoons, the rugged East Fjords, geothermal hot zones around Lake Myvatn, the fishing village of Husavik in the far north, and Snæfellsnes Peninsula before finishing back where we started.
All right, so I know people after the next hour are going to be all thinking, we got to do this on our own vacation. A lot of people historically have done Iceland as a stopover between Europe and the United States. I would say just in rough terms, a very quick trip, 3 days. You do the capital Reykjavik and the Golden Circle. It's a one-day golden loop. You'll see it in a minute. If you had 5 days, I would add the south coast between Reykjavik and Vik. And that right there is about half of the program you're going to see right now. About half of the hour we're going to watch is the city, the Golden Circle, and the south coast to Vik. And then if you really want to do the island correctly, and there's two kinds of travelers, those who have done the ring road and those who haven't, you will spend an extra at least 5 days to go around Iceland, and that would be pushing it. So you'd have a 10-day vacation to cover the island and have a complete look.
Reykjavik, by far the biggest city in the country, is still small. It's about the size of Berkeley or Fargo. With a hardscrabble heritage and a vibrant culture, Today, it offers a tourist-friendly mix of old and new.
While short on world-class sites, Reykjavik certainly has an urban vitality, with plenty of restaurants and shopping to keep visitors entertained. It's unexpectedly cosmopolitan, with an artistic, bohemian flair. And it's blustery. Iceland can be cold, even in summer. This is a typical day in July. And so is this. If you don't like the weather, just wait a few minutes. Reykjavik's neighborhoods are enlivened by street art. A blank wall will just get tagged with graffiti anyway, so instead, homeowners hire talented street artists to create colorful murals. It seems every street leads to Hallgrim's Church, crowning a hill in the town center. Designed by Iceland's state architect in the 1930s, the church represents the national style. Stark and utilitarian, yet beautiful, it evokes the island's volcanic landscape. Stair-stepped gables echo Iceland's basalt cliffs. The interior is Lutheran, serene, and austere. The glass is clear, not stained. And the altar is a simple table. An elevator whisks visitors to the top of the tower for panoramic views over all of Reykjavik. 2 out of every 3 Icelanders lives within sight of this steeple. In front of the church stands a statue of Leif Erikson. Born here in Iceland, this Viking explorer is believed to be the first European to set foot in the Americas, about 5 centuries before Christopher Columbus. The modern sculpture, called the Sea Voyager, is an homage to those Scandinavian adventurers who, beginning in the 9th century, loaded up their ships, set sail into an uncharted ocean, and brought civilization to this uninhabited island. Iceland, so harsh and desolate, steaming with volcanoes, was settled over 1,000 years ago by early Norse farmers. Imagine the original Icelanders, hardy folk, eking out a living on remote farms, living in isolation. They chronicled their lives in the sagas, a blending of historical records, tall tales, and legends.
From the age of the Vikings, the country grew slowly. By the mid-1700s, all of Iceland still only had about 50,000 people, and Reykjavik was just a big farm. As trade, mostly fishing, increased, and towns began to form, Reykjavik emerged as the capital city.
The National Museum collects artifacts from these early days of Iceland. A society made of wood doesn't leave much behind. But a few exquisite items, like these ornamental horns and these whalebone carvings, survive. Pagan Iceland converted to Christianity in about the year 1000. Until relatively modern times, Icelandic settlers lived in rustic cottages. Existence may have been bleak, but families were tight-knit. Many Icelanders lived simple lives, much like this, until the early 20th century. Life was tied to the sea. Icelanders sailed in open boats, fished for cod, and hunted shark for their valuable liver oil. More and more, symbols like an official national costume and its own flag demonstrated a growing sense of national identity.
You know, Cameron, I always like to encourage people to go to the National Museum in the capital city before going out into the countryside because it gives you context. And to me, clearly, the National Museum here is the gotta-see museum for the culture and the history of this country. But there's lots more in Reykjavik, and we just didn't have time in the 1 hour show to include those. What are a couple of other museums that people should be mindful of if they're going to visit Reykjavik?
There's a variety of great art museums. One of them we are going to show in just a moment, the Einar Jónsson Sculpture Museum. But if you like art, there's lots of different branches of the National Museum. There's also a really good maritime museum where you can learn about the sort of the very humble history of Reykjavik as sort of a fishing settlement. There's a really high-tech museum called the Pearl that we're also going to see a little bit later that kind of simulates the nature that we're going to go visit a little bit later. Interesting historical museums. There's something called the Settlement Museum, where you can actually see the foundations, the actual stone foundations of the original longhouse of those original settlers who came over in the 800s from Scandinavia to settle Iceland. And then there's also a lot of sort of, I would say, borderline tacky, but some of them are quite good and quite interesting attractions. There's something called Whales of Iceland, where they've actually have life-size recreation of the kinds of whales that you would see if you went on a whale watching trip. So you can see what a blue whale would look like in real life and kind of walk amidst those. So there's lots of ways for travelers to spend their time in Reykjavik.
And you can, Reykjavik's so small, you could walk to virtually all of those quite easily.
Everything's walkable. Yeah.
But I think that people are going to see three sites in Reykjavik in this show, and those are really head and shoulders above the others, I would say.
Yep. And that's a good day of sightseeing right there, I think.
Great.
Iceland remained part of Denmark through the 1800s. Iceland-born politician Jan Sigurdsson lobbied in Copenhagen for independence, which Denmark finally granted in 1918.
Iceland's parliament, called the Althing, may seem humble, but it represents a 1,000-year journey in this society from rustic farmsteads to today's modern democratic nation.
For locals, Parliament Square remains a place to make your voice heard or to just hang out. Reykjavik still has a hard-working harbor, busy with both industrial vessels and sightseeing boats. And in just the last generation, boldly modern condos and office towers show how today's Iceland is charging into the future. And a fine example of that is the super modern concert hall called Harpa. In the lobby, the sky reflects like you're inside a giant honeycombed prism. This extravagant use of space and glass put Iceland on the world's architectural map when it opened in 2011. Welcoming the public, a hit with locals and tourists, and busy with conferences and concerts, Harpa is the hub of the country's cultural and community activity.
Wow, I got to pause right there because this is a little tiny country of 400,000 people, and they've got the oomph and the gumption to create a world-class architectural destination site in their concert hall. And Cameron, it reminds me that all of the Nordic countries, and we got to distinguish between Scandinavia and Nordic. It took me a while to figure this out. Scandinavia, correct me if I'm wrong, is Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And Nordic is those plus Finland and Iceland, right?
Correct. Yep.
And all of them are social democracies. They're among the most content and well-organized and effective governing societies anywhere on the planet. And it's a challenge for me as an American to go there and not be just really jealous and inspired, and I want to take home some of that social and community sensibility. And oh my goodness! But if you think of the destination buildings, the modern architecture that really is public and cultural and artistic sort of buildings in the capitals of Scandinavia, give us a quick rundown on what you might see.
Well, you know, they do tend to be music halls or cultural centers. The first one I thought of was Finlandia Hall, which is in Helsinki, which is back in the 70s even they were doing this. But I think the ones that really caught people's attention, Oslo built that amazing opera house where you can walk up on the roof of the opera house. It's kind of half submerged in the harbor. And then Copenhagen got in on the act, and they built both an opera house right on their canal there, and they also built a beautiful library, I believe.
Oh yeah,
and so
the diamond.
Seeing,
it's called the Diamond or something like that.
That's it. Yeah. And what you're seeing here, this Harpa, it's very clear that this is part of Iceland wanting to be seen as an advanced Nordic society in the company of Oslo and Copenhagen, and these are very esteemed, much bigger cities in other parts of Europe.
And today, if you go to Oslo, you're going to see the new Munch Museum. You're going to see the new National Museum, which is kind of like this, and it's just mind-blowingly state-of-the-art and beautiful. Oslo has a destination library, and so does Helsinki. So lots of great public works to enjoy while you're in the Nordic countries.
This island is proud of its homegrown artists, especially the sculptor Einar Jónsson, who in the early 1900s was inspired by Rodin. A welcoming sculpture garden is filled with his bronze works. Inside the Einar Jónsson Museum are the plaster originals. Jonsson's works are intense and emotive. You'll see Viking warriors, bold explorers, protective women, and lots of drama. He blended elements of Christianity, Old Norse legend, Greek mythology, and his own belief that every person contains at least a kernel of goodness. A visit here reminds us that even small countries produce talented artists like Jónsson, worth getting to know. For a peek at the city's everyday charms and more insight into the culture, I'm joined by local tour guide Saga Friedrichsdottir, a Reykjavik native who loves showing off her hometown.
Saga, I love Iceland, but this language is impossible for me.
Yeah.
How can any tourist remember that?
Oh, well, I mean, Skólavörðustígur.
Stolleborgestig.
Yeah, that's pretty hard, but you know, we all speak English as well.
Thank goodness. The street makes me happy.
Very happy, very colorful, dedicated to gay pride, but also a reminder that Iceland is much for just equality and human rights. And this is always Rainbow Street.
Nice.
Yes.
So in the summer, days are very long, but in the winter, what is it like in the winter?
Well, cold and very, very dark. But we have these beautiful, colorful houses that really characterizes Reykjavik. They brighten up our days in winter. And also you notice we have a lot of corrugated iron that clothes these wooden houses, which was revolutionary material because it protected the houses from this crazy Icelandic weather.
I'm sure historically, this is a society that has dealt with hardships.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. But we have strong mentality, and there's actually a saying in Icelandic, "Þetta reddast."
It's þetta reddast.
Þetta reddast, and it basically just means it's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. It's gonna work out.
On weekends, the downtown flea market is a characteristic and mostly local shopping scene.
This is really a fun place.
And don't miss those famous Icelandic sweaters.
I don't do a lot of shopping, but when it comes to the Nordic countries, I like a sweater. Oh, that's beautiful. So Saga, really feels like good wool.
I mean, we consider it to be the best wool in the world.
This is like Icelandic sheep.
Proper Icelandic sheep wool, yes.
Yeah. And what is it special? Because it feels a little special.
Well, I guess because they've been roaming freely in Iceland since 874. They know how to deal with rough Icelandic weather, and they give us the perfect clothing for that.
Oh, yeah. Do you think it's good?
Yes. Very good.
I like it because it feels it has history, you know? It's
Good. You see them.
yeah.
Wow.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
You look like a local.
I feel like a local. I can speak Icelandic.
Yes.
The flea market is also a place you can sample some unique tastes. As the early Icelanders settled this untamed island, they resorted to many hardship foods.
So when we come to Iceland, everybody has to try the shark.
They have to try the shark, definitely. I mean, this is the famous Greenland shark.
This is shark,
Yes.
fermented shark.
Fermented shark, yeah, because if you would eat the shark straight away, you know, when it's fresh, you would die, unfortunately.
You would die.
Yes, it is toxic in
So how did
Iceland.
you ferment this?
So you chop it in pieces, you bury it in the ground for some time, and then hang it up, and you get rid of the ammonia, or like the urine, basically, which is the toxins. And I always think, like, how many tries did it take to figure out this method of, like, not getting killed by eating the shark?
That just stokes my appetite.
Right?
Is it possible to try some?
You have to try it. There's some pieces here,
Oh, good. I'm
There
gonna
you
put
go.
this piece of shark down. There we go.
and this is usually how it comes, like in small pieces. So you're more than welcome to have a piece or two if you fancy it. Give it a good chew.
Wow. No, that is
Yes.
very fishy right now.
Yes, wait for the aftertaste.
Yeah. My goodness, now it's like it just got swept over with ammonia.
Right. And usually you're supposed to drink it with the Black Death schnapps.
Some
Brandywine.
akvavit, some firewater.
Yes.
Oh,
Please have
baby,
some.
that is unforgettable.
Yeah,
Oh,
but now you tried the famous Icelandic shark.
the aftertaste, I just feel like I've been in a gas station or something.
Cameron, do you remember
Yeah,
that?
what'd you think?
So I got our shark. Hey, by the way, she mentioned there just in passing urine, and I understand sharks have no bladders. So tell us the whole the chemistry or the biology there.
Well, I'm no biologist, but what they tell you in Iceland is, yeah, sharks, they secrete toxins through their skin, and so it becomes very toxic. And so they would hunt these sharks, and they were using a few parts of the shark and had a bunch left over. So the Icelanders, because they live on an island where there's so few supplies of food, they try to eat anything they can. Somehow, somebody somewhere figured out this system where if you chop up the shark and bury it for a while and then hang it on those rafters that you saw, it becomes edible. Not delicious, but edible. It won't kill you now.
It won't kill you, and it gives you some nutrition. And in Iceland, I guess that was good enough.
I think that in Iceland, that's all you can ask for, especially a few hundred years ago.
I got to admit, it is funny when you're in Reykjavik. There's so many tourists in Reykjavik, and they all are hell bent on having the 3-course touristy menu. And what are the 3 courses?
Well, you've got the fermented shark.
Yeah.
You've got puffin, which, yes, Icelanders do eat traditionally puffin. Icelanders will eat anything that's edible. And then, of course, there's whale, which is kind of a controversial one, but traditionally Iceland has hunted for whales. And these days, it's mainly, a lot of people say it's mainly the tourists who are curious tourists who are eating the whale. So there's a lot of talk in Icelandic society about maybe ending that practice.
Okay, so those are the touristy ones. And if you want to eat puffin, whale, or shark, there are issues, ethical and miserable, that you can deal with. Okay.
Iceland is a volcanic island. It's formed at the rift where the European and North American tectonic plates are pulling apart. That's why there's a chain of active volcanoes, hot springs, and steam vents like this, cutting right through the center of the country.
Visitors come to Iceland hoping to see a volcanic eruption, but big dramatic eruptions that casual visitors can actually get up close to and see are very rare. But exploring this island does come with plenty of steamy serendipity. Like roadside attractions, bubbling mud holes gurgle with molten muck. Vents spew steam. And as the fog clears from your glasses, suddenly you're interested in geology. The entire island is shaped by lava from past eruptions. Dark, chunky lava rock blanketed by cushy moss covers much of Iceland's surface, giving the countryside a desolate, almost lunar feel. And the Icelanders have ingeniously harnessed their endless supply of green energy. Geothermal plants in the middle of nowhere are hard at work, boring deep into the Earth's crust to tap into hot water. And pipelines carry that superheated water through miles of countryside to heat and power Reykjavik and other communities. Despite the chill, houses are toasty. In fact, you'll notice many small windows propped open. Because that geothermal heat is so cheap, people don't even bother turning down the radiator. They just crack the window. The most enjoyable use for Iceland's hot water is its thermal pools. And the most famous spa is 45 minutes outside Reykjavik, the Blue Lagoon. Years ago, a geothermal plant began dumping its hot, mineral-rich wastewater into this lava landscape. Locals discovered it was a great place to take a dip. Developers then transformed it into a high-end spa. Today, Iceland's top tourist attraction is close to the airport and a popular first or last stop for visitors. The Blue Lagoon is a lavish spa, but it's extremely touristy, and you sure won't meet many Icelanders here. But the good news, you have plenty of alternatives that are just as relaxing. The community thermal pools.
This is really, I'll never forget this on camera. Cameron, you probably remember it. I was in the pool. This is the small community pool, and it's fun to be there with the camera and just kind of thrilling to be sharing this. And I'm all ready to do it. It's going to be perfect. And then I'm halfway through the on camera, and a little kid is on the slide, and he's going to crash right next to me. And I thought for a moment, maybe that's going to mess up the whole on camera, but I thought, no, Theta Reddit. It'll all work out. That little phrase. And I just was very thankful that the on-camera actually worked with the little kid splashing right in the middle of it.
The Blue Lagoon is popular, but it's expensive. About 10 times the cost of a pool like this. You can luxuriate in the Blue Lagoon, or you can soak with the locals in a neighborhood pool. The choice is yours. Today, I'm soaking local.
Fed by natural thermal springs, the main pool is bathwater warm. Water slides, cascades, and kid zones keep locals entertained. This is where Icelanders meet up after work to connect with friends and family. I can't think of a better way to meet the locals. And for the ultimate in relaxation, 100-degree hot pots simmer nearby. Soaking together is a great equalizer. Student, truck driver, doctor, and tourist. Everybody's equal in the pool.
Hey, Cameron, just briefly, when people are encouraged to go to the neighborhood pool, I think it sounds a little bit nerve-wracking and so on. How is the process? Because every town, every little community, every suburb has the neighborhood pool, just like we're in right here.
Yep, they're all over the place, and it sounds intimidating, but it's really not that bad. It's basically like going to your hometown swimming pool, except the water is 100 degrees, and you're surrounded by Icelanders, right? It's really user-friendly. Everyone speaks English. It's very affordable. It's usually about $10. Some of the premium bass, like the Blue Lagoon, could be $60, $70, $80, $100, which is one of the reasons it's nice to do these local ones. There is a very strict policy in Iceland that you have to shower naked, because it's a sanitary thing. So culturally, I've been told that if you try to shower with your swimsuit on, you might actually get kind of a dirty look from the Icelanders. So sometimes Americans have to get over that. But once you shower and you're in your swimsuit and you head out to the pool, as you can see, it's just an absolute delight. And for me, this is one of my favorite things to do when I'm in Iceland. Any chance I get, whether I'm in Reykjavik or in a small village in the middle of nowhere, if I've got an hour to spend at the end of the day, I will go find one of these thermal bathing pools. And they're all over the place. And some of them are on beautiful cliffs looking over a fjord with like infinity pools. And some of them are these really humble, rustic things in the middle of nowhere. But it's a great way to unwind when you're traveling around Iceland.
I'm so thankful for your tour guide leadership in encouraging us to be open to the neighborhood pools because, the Blue Lagoon is amazing, but it's only tourists, and it costs, $100 by the time you get out of there, and it's a lot of work to get out to the airport and make a reservation and all that. When you can pop into this neighborhood pool for $10, and here you're the only tourist in the pool, and everybody speaks English, and everybody's quite amazed that you're there, and you've got a beautiful social scene and the real experience.
Iceland is all about the great outdoors. But if the weather's bad, as it often is, several indoor sites here in Reykjavik offer a taste of the majesty of Iceland without leaving the capital city.
At the edge of town is a one-stop way to experience this country's top natural wonders, at least virtually, under one roof, the Pearl. Exhibits feature fiery volcanoes with majestic footage that gives a sense of awe. Birds perched precariously on towering cliffs, and a 300-foot-long ice cave. It's a primer on Icelandic nature, especially worthwhile for those without the time or money to see the real thing. The most elusive natural thrill is the aurora borealis. In summer, when it's too late to see these northern lights, you can step into the planetarium to get a sense of this fabled phenomenon. But of course, there's nothing like experiencing the real thing. Remember, even if you come in the winter solely for the northern lights, there's no guarantees of seeing them. But if you do see those ethereal lights dancing in the sky, the experience will stay with you for the rest of your days.
I do have to interject here. Tourist boards, tourism is a big part of economies everywhere you go in the world, and they are working very hard to level out the demand. Everybody goes in Iceland to the short peak season in the summertime, and they want to find excuses to get people to come in the off season, in the dead of winter. So they are desperate for tourists in the winter, and they'll promote the Aurora Borealis because that's when you see that. Sure, it may be worth the trouble to go in the winter to see the actual Aurora Borealis, but do remember the weather can often be bad, and if the weather's bad, your whole vacation based on the Aurora Borealis will be disappointed. And you've got to understand also the consequence of going in the winter when it comes to short days versus long days. Your days will be 6 hours of sunshine instead of 20 hours of sunshine if you go in the winter or in the summer. So I'm a fan of seeing the Aurora Borealis in the planetarium right here where we are and having the wonders of summertime Iceland to enjoy the long days and the power of nature rather than making that pilgrimage in the dead of winter to see the Aurora Borealis. But people can differ.
The weather's great, and from Reykjavik, we're making the classic 150-mile day trip loop, the Golden Circle. Within minutes, we're immersed in Iceland's iconic wide-open spaces and enjoying the dramatic scenery of this island's natural wonders.
Today we'll see gorges, waterfalls, geysers, and more, with epic views all along the way. By the way, most people do this as a day trip on a tour bus, but we're driving.
Our first stop is Þingvellir. This national park is important to Icelanders for two reasons. First, at this gorge, you can see the rift that marks that slow separation of tectonic plates. Walking along this fissure in the Earth's crust, travelers sense this meeting of two continents, America on the left, Europe on the right. And second, Þingvellir, which means assembly plains, was the site of the original Althing, an annual gathering of early settlers.
This is where the nation of Iceland was born. 1,000 years ago, chieftains from isolated farms all over the island traveled great distances to meet right here every summer and make important decisions. In an age when almost no one could read or write, each meeting began by reciting the memorized highlights from last year's gathering.
History aside, Þingvellir is inviting for a nature walk. In this evocative spot, waterfalls tumble, and the river flows as geology does its slow-motion dance. Just up the road is a geological site actually called Geyser. This geothermal field, colorful and steamy with scalding water, is home to the original geyser, which means gusher in Icelandic. The site is otherworldly, as pools bubble and steam fills the air, all with a whiff of sulfur. But the big show is the central geyser. Tourists line up, cameras poised with anticipation, ready to capture the moment. They wait and wait and wait. Sometimes they wait so long, the weather actually improves. And then, suddenly, with a gurgling belch, the geyser explodes, rocketing skyward and thrilling the crowd. As you drive the Golden Circle, remember to slow down and enjoy the scenery. And it's not just about the famous natural sights. Along the way, you'll see slices of Iceland's unique agriculture. With its efficient greenhouses, even with the lack of good topsoil and its difficult weather, Iceland grows plenty of tasty vegetables. The climate is harsh for conventional farming, but its expertise in greenhouse technology and in putting geothermal energy to good use, yields an abundant harvest. For lunch, we're stopping at a working farm. It's clear that frugal farmers here are tapping into the tourist boom. This family now serves hungry sightseers. The soup bar is a budget standby. It's all you can slurp, with fresh baked bread and a glass of water and a cup of coffee. You can finish with a farm-fresh dessert with a special twist. The cows actually watch the diners enjoying ice cream made from their very own milk.
Okay, so now we transition into the amazing horses of Iceland. And this was something that is a sort of a dramatic dimension of the natural beauty of the island. And this is one of the things I love to do on our shoots, is have a montage of beautiful shots taken from all over a country. So Simon and Carl and Cameron had a list of topics we have to get many examples of so we could cobble them together into this show. And one of those was horses. So as they drove all around the island, when they saw beautiful horses, you bet they stopped and videoed them.
For generations, this family has raised horses. Horse lovers know that Iceland's local breed is special. Small and sturdy, these were first brought over by Vikings in the settlement age 1,000 years ago, chosen because they could fit inside the hold of a ship, yet they were strong enough to work hard once they arrived. Throughout the country, you'll see these wind-blown beauties. A long-established ban on importing other breeds means that today's Icelandic horses are purebred and unique. They also have a distinctive gait that thrills equestrians. The final stop on our Golden Circle Loop is one of the most impressive waterfalls in a country famed for waterfalls, Gullfoss, the Golden Falls. The churning glacial river plummets into a narrow gorge. Up close, the cauldron comes with a deafening roar. And even from high above, visitors feel the spray, wonderstruck. Gullfoss is just one of many waterfalls Iceland has to offer. But if you only have time to see one, this is it. It's rare anywhere on Earth to find such a dramatic display of water and gravity.
Gullfoss is one of those places Iceland specializes in, where you feel the raw power of nature. It's the perfect climax to a Golden Circle day.
And the final leg of the Golden Circle takes us across a vast volcanic plateau. From this lonely lunar landscape, we're just 30 minutes from downtown Reykjavik. And as it happens, it's time for dinner. Eating in Iceland is expensive. Thankfully, you've got a range of options, from fish and chips to fine French cuisine.
If you're willing to pay for it, you can eat really well. And tonight, we're enjoying a splurge.
This trendy restaurant features traditional local ingredients, but with a modern twist. You'll find the staples you'd expect, like lamb and fish. While the perpetual flames of the kitchen kick out plenty of meat for carnivores, it always has a vegetarian option. I'm dining with my travel buddy and fellow guidebook author, Cameron Hewitt, and we're starting our meal with Arctic char and langoustine lava rocks, served on a lava rock.
So the inside is langoustine, which are kind of like little super-sized shrimp.
It's tempura, but
They
made to look like
made it
lava.
look like lava rocks on lava rock. Ooh.
Actually cooked in a lava flow.
Yeah.
That's good.
Arctic char, which is kind of like, again, it tastes like a salmon, sort of a pink fish. With this mustard seed and dill on top.
If this seems fancy, it is. Iceland, while expensive, is a place to invest in a memorable meal.
It's going to cost you a fair amount anyways. If you go just a little bit more, you can have this.
Yeah, that's what I think. You save up and eat groceries for a few days and then splurge for a meal like this.
For our main course, we're having some of those staples. Cameron's having the salted cod, and I'm going for the lamb chops. But with sauces and presentation the Vikings wouldn't recognize.
I think there are many ways to do cod here, I would imagine.
Sure, that's very good.
To drink, I prefer something domestic. And this island definitely doesn't produce any wine. Instead, it's a local microbrew. Finally, it's profiteroles for dessert. With this, that fermented shark is a distant memory. And that is certainly worth paying a premium for.
From here in downtown Reykjavik, we'll drive 800 miles, all the way around Iceland's Ring Road. Which highway? Highway 1, of course. You can't get lost.
On the first leg is Iceland's south coast. Just 2 hours from Reykjavik, and we're already deep in the thrills, chalking up the experiences people visiting here dream of.
Driving the entire Ring Road takes about 30 hours non-stop. To do it justice, you need at least 5 or 6 days. You can go in either direction. We're going counterclockwise. And it's summertime, so it stays light really late.
Seljalandsfoss, one of Iceland's most accessible waterfalls, is a favorite stop.
Hey, Cameron, I think this is a good opportunity just to remind people that travel tips make a big difference in their travels, don't they?
Absolutely.
We're going to look at this waterfall, and I'm just so impressed by one of the tips in the book that you put in there.
Well, everyone goes to the south coast in the morning, and they all want to stop at this waterfall as they go by. But in the morning, it's in the shade and in the shadow, and it doesn't look that great. But because we've done this a couple of times and working on our guidebooks, we know if you come back, if you're doing a day trip and coming back in the afternoon, wait to stop at the waterfall until afternoon. So the scenes you're about to see were filmed in the afternoon when it's just bathed in glorious light, and you get the rainbows and you get all of the beautiful lighting on it.
So people are going to see all the little twinkles and the rainbows, and from a TV point of view and a sightseeing point of view, it would be a totally different experience in the morning. And that is, it's just a little bit of thoughtfulness, and people who invest in a book, there are other books, but we love these ones by Rick Steves, and Cameron Hewitt. And if you read it in the morning, just be the tour guide in your family, and you'll go, oh, if we see this on the way back, it'll be less crowded, easier parking, and it'll be more fun from a photography point of view. Also, I want to remind people, we've seen a lot, and except for this one waterfall, everything we've done so far can be done in 3 days. With that medium-sized trip, you would have a day or two in Reykjavik and 1 day for the Golden Circle, and you'd see everything we've seen in the show so far. Now we're venturing out a little bit more, and as you think about this, I just got to say, everything we do, our middle name is accessibility. We want you to be able to do it too, and the specifics are in the guidebook, so you can do it there. I do want to take a moment to thank our Monday night travel team. We couldn't get to first base without our wonderful team. We've got Lisa, we've got Gabe, we've got Emily, and we've got Ben. And I'm just thankful that nearly every Monday night, we've got something going on thanks to their hard work. Hey, Cameron, I've been sipping some nice Icelandic wine here.
Well, I don't think it's actually Icelandic. If you want wine in Iceland, you got to go to the liquor store or pay a royally at the bar.
Okay, so normally we have some food to eat. That's kind of and I looked all over the place, and all I could find was some seaweed. I've got a nice plate of seaweed here. Probably more Japanese in this case than Icelandic. But what do you have from your pantry?
Well, in addition to my souvenir puffin mug for my tea, I actually squirreled away when we were making the show a year ago some wonderful Icelandic chocolates. There's everything you can imagine, all different kinds. It's basically licorice dipped in milk chocolate. In milk chocolate, super delicious combination. You might think licorice and chocolate sounds strange, but that all over Scandinavia, all over Nordic Europe, this is big. And the crew survived on this during those 18 days that we were in Iceland. This was our favorite snack in the car.
Is that licorice? Is the local word for licorice? Licorice. Nordic countries, they all love their licorice. And if you never really appreciated black licorice, give it a shot. And that's a reminder, get out of your comfort zone. One of my favorite munchies was right in the gas station mini market, just like you got that. And it's dried cod, right? Like sort of like
It's kind of, yeah, it's hradfiskur. It's kind of like a cod jerky. It's yet another, like the shark, it's yet another hardship cuisine item from the hard scrabble past of Iceland, but it's basically dried out cod.
Well, how is Leif Erikson going to get all the way to back to Norway to pick up some more relatives? You know, I mean, it's you got to have that dried food on the ship, and I suppose dried cod was a way we do that. All right. Hey, well, thanks for those little details, and let's get back to our tour of Iceland. We do want to remind people that we're going to be answering your questions after the show, so send them in, and Gabe will organize them, and we'll answer them.
The water tumbles more than 200 feet from cliffs high above, like a bridal veil. On sunny days, the scene is like a party as everybody is suddenly waterfall crazy and connoisseurs of rainbows. Late in the day, with the setting sun, everyone's a photographer. A slippery trail leads up behind the cascading water, and back here the energy's palpable. And rain parkas get a good workout.
Here in Iceland, we experience both the power of nature and the beauty of nature.
This country is expert at monetizing its stunning nature, making the great outdoors accessible. Each morning, rugged vehicles load up with tourists and head for the backcountry. We've hired one of these enormous trucks with a driver, eager for a thrilling experience. We're heading up a remote and rocky valley called Thorsmork. Even in this land of superlatives, Thorsmork is one of a kind. Venturing far beyond where normal cars can tread, it's a land of super vehicles. But it's still accessible. There's even a public bus service up this remote valley. All must have tires that deflate with the push of a button for extra traction. Super Jeeps and buses alike, equipped with these monster tires, churn through rivers of glacial melt, giving all on board a tale to tell. People come to hike. Remote lodges provide simple bases. Up here, nature is the great equalizer, as everyone is psyching up, prepping to create that lifetime memory. And hikers appreciate the portable footbridges. They come with wheels to be repositioned each season depending on where the river flows. Charging deeper and deeper into the valley, I keep thinking the off-road prowess of our vehicle would make for a great TV ad. Finally, after parking our Super Jeep, we actually work up a sweat with a short hike. Feeling small in this primeval setting, we're humbled at the majesty of what surrounds us. And glaciers reaching down from the mountains remind us of Iceland's snow-capped rooftop.
The black on the ice is ash. It's from volcanic eruptions. Could be fresh, could be very old.
Nature is dynamic here. It's unpredictable. It changes without asking. Savoring this moment, it occurs to me this is Europe, wilder than I've ever experienced.
I gotta say, it was so frustrating not be able to take a day and take a serious hike. Wouldn't that have been nice, Cameron?
It would have been great, but you know, that's the thing about Iceland. There's three kinds of hikes basically. There's these fun little short half-hour nature walks essentially. And when you do like the Golden Circle or the South Coast, you're going to do a half dozen of those. It's from your parking lot to the waterfall or your parking lot to the canyon. So you're going to get out and do little hikes. If you want to do a serious hike, an all-day hike, then you really have to commit some serious time to it. We didn't have time for that because we were busy filming, but those people you saw hiking up into the gorge, I think we're in for a really great hike. When I came to Thorsmork a few years ago to work on our guidebook, I was actually able to spend several hours doing the hike up to one of those peaks that you see above you, and then all the way back down the other side. And then the third kind of hike that really serious hikers love in Iceland are multi-day hikes. And there are several prescribed routes where you can go 2, 3, 4, 5 days staying in huts or camping as you go across the spine of the island. But if you just want to get some nice scenery, I think the hike you and I did actually was pretty darn good for a 15-minute hike to some stunning scenery. It was incredible.
Nothing wrong with the little hikes, but the main thing is get out of your car and get away from the car park. And in 20 minutes, it's like you've been hiking all day sometimes. So that's a real good tip, I think.
Highway 1 laces together a steady parade of side-tripping options. Each detour comes with a convenient lesson in the local history and a schematic map locating every farm, place to eat or sleep, and point of interest on that smaller road. Like any road trip, doing the ring road requires multiple one-night stays. There are plenty of accommodation options. They range from big boxy hotels to prefab cabins, tight little yurts, remote hostels, and camping. Many enjoy a camper van or pitching a tent. Efficient and scenic campgrounds help budget travelers both save money on hotels and meals and enjoy a wonderful circle of new friends.
And I gotta say, eating is not expensive if you're going groceries. And when you're going camping, you're going groceries. Otherwise, it's hard to eat without spending a lot of money, especially if you're a family. So the appeal from a budget point of view of one of those camper vans or pitching the tent in Iceland, more than any place I can imagine, makes a lot of sense if you're on a tight budget.
It's been a long day of sightseeing for us. Time to settle in. Like so many farms, this family is meeting the new demand, housing more tourists and fewer animals. The welcome is warm.
I'm Rick Steves.
Hello, Mr. Steves. How are you today?
I'm good. It's nice to be here.
The rooms are simple, but plenty comfortable. And the views are Icelandic. A major stop on the Iceland Grand Tour is the Westman Islands, just a 40-minute ferry crossing from the south coast. While locals sit inside, tourists soak up the view as we approach the craggy group of islands. The ferry squeezes into the harbor, and tucked into the shelter of the cliffs, our port comes into view. The Westman Islands' only town is a fishing community, surrounded by sea cliffs and a rugged terrain shaped by eons of volcanic eruptions. Sightseeing boats are dwarfed and outnumbered by a fleet of fishing boats. Visitors strolling the boardwalk sense how fishing is big in this country, and the Westman Islands fleet is the leading producer. Main Street has most of the commerce, and it leads past inviting neighborhood lanes to a classic Icelandic church. But the island is best known for a fiery eruption in 1973 when its volcano blew. It was a massive event. The island actually increased in size. The town's volcano museum tells the story. One frightening night, the slumbering volcano above town rumbled violently to life. Everyone evacuated by morning, but for months, molten lava flowed, slowly creeping closer and closer to the town center. The museum's centerpiece is an actual house that was completely engulfed by the lava.
"50 years ago, this was an oozing wall of red-hot molten lava. It was a slow-motion disaster, gradually consuming the town. Thankfully, it stopped right here.
Back at the harbor front, we're catching a minibus tour to get a more personal take on that terrifying eruption and to explore the island. Local guide Abby was born and raised here, knows the island, and is ready to roll. We're driving on lava left from the 1973 eruption.
So, good things, bad things with this huge eruption like this. Now, nobody died because of the eruption, which is a very good thing. We gained also about 20%. The island increased in size about 20%.
And you're more famous for tourists because you had the volcano.
Yes, it got us on the map also. Underneath us are streets, 50 meters down. Underneath us, we have streets, we have houses. Actually, not far from here is my grandparents' house. And right here below is one of our schools. This marking here is a memorial about a house underneath here from a wealthy fisherman.
His house was straight
This house
down.
right underneath us here.
Huh.
And everywhere on this lava, we have these wooden crosses like this one here, for example. This is called Langagata, one of many streets that went under.
So that's the name of a street.
There's the main name of the street right underneath us.
The townside of the lava ridge has additional examples of what was lost and reminders of how the entire town could have been consumed by the lava flow. With Ebby's help, we learned about the island's long Viking history and the hardships of living on an isolated island so long ago here in the far north.
Cameron, you remember I really was struggling to get a little more history here into the script, but we just didn't have time for it. But I love that, these are called the Westman Islands. I don't know many names in Iceland because of the Icelandic language, but this is Westman Islands. Tell us the backstory of why they're called that.
Well, if I remember correctly, the Westmen are actually the Irish. And so, because when you think about it, the Icelanders originally came from Norway, so the Irish were to the west. And so apparently the Westman Islands were something of a prison colony or sort of a slave colony. A lot of Irishmen and women were enslaved and brought over to work in places like the Westman Islands. And if I remember, there are actually no trees on the island. And so they had to build, of course, these humble structures out of stone instead.
Yeah, and it's very evocative to me to think that these nice Icelanders, whenever they needed some slave labor, they could just go over here and grab one of the Irish men. It's the kind of history you pick up when you travel around, and we can't put it all in the TV show, but there's a lot more to learn than we're able to show right now, and that's one of our challenges, is how to distill a show down. And everything we're talking about during these breaks is stuff that if we had a 90-minute show instead of a 60-minute show, we might have included it in the program.
Early settlers soon learned that on such a harsh volcanic island with poor farmland, you have to come up with some creative ways to feed yourself.
We've never been any kind of farmers because we're a volcano island. But we had to eat. We have fish, plenty of fish, and the only wildlife we have here are the birds. So we would eat the eggs. We collected eggs because of survival.
The nests are on the cliff. How did they harvest the eggs?
So you'll have to come down in a safety rope and you learn how to collect the eggs here. Okay. And we swing over to where we want to go to collect the eggs, and we swing back. And that is also a safety reason. So if birds are attacking you, you can swing away.
We moved to another cliff to learn how the tradition of egg collecting, or sprunga, is passed on to the next generation.
Do people still know how to do this practice?
Absolutely. This is a traditional thing that every local kid will learn. We start at the age of 8 or 9 years old. Like this girl here, she's about 13 years old. Both boys and girls will learn this. This is a traditional thing that every local kid learns. Literally, your grandfather or grandmother will show you literally the ropes. And this is the first thing you learn before you go up and collect the eggs. First you learn sprunga, then you learn how to collect the eggs. It's not a matter of we have to. It is a matter of not forgetting how it was, how we had to collect the eggs for survival. The rule is, if there are 4 eggs, you can take 2. If there are 3 eggs, you can take 1. You always leave 2 eggs behind because we don't want to damage the bird colonies here. And we've been doing this for 1,000 years. Still, we have all the birds here, so we must be doing something right.
And as if to prove his point, Ebby takes us to a thriving puffin colony, popular with birders and tourists alike.
So this location here is the biggest puffin colony in the world. Now, people come here to see the puffins, of course. The puffins, they live in the ocean for 8 months. And they're only here during the summer just to do that one thing, and that is to make that 1 egg a year that they make. They make 1 egg per year, per couple. Now, half of the colony is right now underneath you. There are thousands of birds sitting, taking care of the egg right now.
Underneath us?
Underneath us, right now.
Literally under us now.
Underneath us. Everywhere is a burrow where they've digged in. And they have this like an apartment kind of. And half of the colony is outside now, out in the ocean, getting fish. And the other half is taking care of the egg. And people all around the world come to see the puffins, of course. And they come here.
Back on the mainland, we're continuing around the Ring Road. And there's lots more dramatic natural sights. From this rugged promontory, on a clear day, you can see virtually the entire south coast. And just below is one of this volcanic island's many black sand beaches. Travelers are enthralled by this fantastical landscape. Sea stacks rise out of the briny waves. Basalt formations bring out the kid in every adventurer. A windy walk immersed in this pristine beauty can be unforgettable. Marking the end of the south coast, the village of Vik is the southernmost settlement in Iceland. Vik is both humble and sparse, little more than a practical pit stop for travelers. And for this village, that's nothing new. Historically, there was no harbor. A century ago, before the arrival of the road, provisions came in by boats beached on this shore. What we've done so far with Cameron Hewitt, who co-authors guidebooks with me, is all within day tripping distance from Reykjavik.
Reykjavik is 3 hours that way, or 6 days that way. I'm heading straight back to work on the book, but we'll follow Cameron and the crew as he does his research the long way around. We'll meet up back in Reykjavik.
All right. Well, Cameron, you ready to head around the ring road?
Let's do it.
Yeah. You know, looking at these little moments that we've just been sharing in the last half hour or so, you remember when we were researching the guidebook, and there's all of these things we've showed in the TV show were experiences you and I had when we were making the first edition of the Rick Steves Iceland guidebook. And so many times I'd look at something and I'd think, this has got to be in a TV show. You know, I sat there with Ebby in the same puffin place. They've got that little cabin there that the people sit. And it's just, there's so much beautiful stuff that if you're well prepared and organized, you can go there and you can experience it yourself. That's one thing great about our TV shows is anything that you see us do, you can do also. You can go to that flea market and you can buy a sweater. And I didn't have I wasn't like haggling too hard, but I asked the lady there, could you throw in a hat? Because I was spending a lot of money. So I got my hat. And this is a high fashion hat for me here. But I just love to have those meaningful little souvenirs that we can take with us. Hey, Cameron, set us up now, because as we just said, it's just about 100 miles from Reykjavik to Vik.
And then we had another 700 miles to go all the way around Iceland to get back to Reykjavik where we started. And so you had been with us for several days and you headed off and we got in the car, me and Simon, our producer, and Carl, our photographer. And we did that basically 700-mile road trip in about 6 days. And so we had really long days. You're not going to see the behind the scenes, but we were driving 4, 5, 6 hours a day. Remember, this is early July, so it was light out virtually around the clock. And that was nice for shooting because we could film late into the evening, but it was also a little risky because you suddenly realize it's 11 o'clock and you've got an hour to go before you get to your hotel. You lose track of time. So we would often do, most of it was one night stops, as any road trip, you're kind of going all the way around. We'd pull in.
I remember, Cameron, you and I kind of thought long and hard about where are we going to nail ourselves down, because on a road trip like that in Iceland, you really have to determine where you're going to be and make your reservations for the hotel, don't you?
Absolutely. In fact, we had trouble finding reservations. We filmed in July. We started looking for rooms in February, even January, and places, even especially in the small communities on the outskirts of the island, were booked up already. So that was hard. But we'd leave early in the morning and shoot all day long and drive all day long, and we'd pull into the hotel at maybe 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and we'd be starving, and we'd ask at the front desk, so where can we get a bite to eat around here? And they'd kind of, little tiny communities right in the middle of nowhere, they'd kind of look at us apologetically and say, well, the 2 or 3 restaurants are closed, but there is a gas station about 10 miles up the road where you can get hot dogs. And so I think there were 3, maybe 4 or 5 nights that our dinner was 3 hot dogs. We weren't trying to save money. That was just literally the only hot food we could get anywhere near where we were staying. But it was a great road trip. And as you'll see, we got to see some just incredible scenery all the way around.
All right, so I'm heading back to Reykjavik, and we're going to travel with Cameron here to do the ring road. Thanks, Cameron.
Leaving Vik, the traffic thins out and the landscape opens up.
We've just left Rick in Vik, and now we're continuing around the ring road. And already the terrain is changing and the weather is changing. In fact, Iceland is always changing. That's why it's so important for us to go and travel in person to update our guidebooks and make sure we have the very latest information.
The next stop is glacier country, 1/10 of Iceland is covered in glaciers, and the biggest one spreads across the top of these mountains. Its many outlets, called tongues, reach down and lap at lowland valleys. The road crosses vast plains of glacial grit and gravel, laced with milky rivers. At the foot of some glaciers are lagoons, bobbing with small icebergs that have broken off. Lagoon cruises take tourists out on these moody and beautiful waters. Passengers gear up in heavy jackets and prepare for the adventure. They climb into inflatable boats and then float through this dreamy landscape. It's an unforgettable experience, no matter the weather. Our enthusiastic guide offers a lesson in Glaciers 101.
But then, of course, there's still the white ice and the blue ice.
He explains how and why there are different colors of ice. There's black ice, which is coated with dirt or volcanic ash. Then there's white ice, which is packed with air bubbles. Transparent ice has fewer air bubbles. And then blue ice, which is highly compressed and dense, has no air bubbles at all and reflects blue light intensely. Travelers get a chance to hold a chunk of ice that originally fell as snow 500 years ago. The guide explains how glaciers naturally grow and recede. In fact, this glacier used to extend all the way across the lagoon at the end of the 19th century, but has been retreating now for over 130 years.
It is absolutely natural, it is absolutely normal that at some points the glaciers are growing, at some points the glaciers are retreating. But now the glaciers are retreating way, way faster because of global warming.
Even from the shore, people marvel at how glacial ice comes in a stunning variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. The wind pushes the icebergs into a traffic jam where the lagoon meets the Atlantic. Birds and seals feed in the swirling waters as the icebergs wait for their final journey out to sea. When conditions are right, chunks of ice wash up on the nearby black sand beach. Nicknamed Diamond Beach, it looks like thousands of gigantic gems scattered over black velvet. Leaving the glaciers behind, the ring road hugs the wild coastline. The churning North Atlantic surf crashes on deserted beaches and rocky shores. Soon, yawning bays grow narrower, becoming the serene fjords that slice deep into the east coast of Iceland. Driving along the East Fjords is long and slow, but always scenic. And around each bend unfolds one grand fjord after another. Tucked away at the deepest point in one fjord is the colorful village of Seyðisfjörður. This charming place is a magnet for young artists who appreciate its majestic setting, vibrant murals, and trendy places to eat and drink. It's a welcome pocket of quirky creativity in this very remote corner. Leaving the fjords and turning inland, the road crosses the vast and arid highlands. Tucked away in these rocky folds is another iconic waterfall. Arriving at what looks like just a desolate volcanic landscape, if you follow the trail, you'll hear the thundering falls before you see them. Dettifoss is this country's most powerful waterfall. With 50,000 gallons of water every second tumbling through an awe-inspiring gorge of basalt cliffs. The falls fill the air with mist and rainbows and fill visitors with an appreciation for the grandeur of Icelandic nature.
Hey, Cameron, before we leave this waterfall, there are so many appealing waterfalls, and generally we have to be selective. Would you say the three waterfalls we've visited are the top three in Iceland?
Yeah, those are the top three, and handily enough, each one is on a different sort of day trip route. So you had the Gullfoss that we saw at the beginning on the Golden Circle. Mm-hmm. You had the Seljalandsfoss, which was that really tall bridal veil waterfall that's on the south coast. And if you do the whole ring road, you can go to this Dettifoss. There's lots of other waterfalls. I'd say there's a fourth great one out in the West Fjords that very few people get to because it's kind of out of the way. But the fact is, anywhere you go in Iceland, you're going to find spectacular waterfalls. These are the three to kind of go out of your way for. And then along the way, you can't help but see dozens of others.
And if somebody said, what's the name of that waterfall again? I would say, I don't know, but I know that Rick Steves cares about your information. And on his website, when you watch the Iceland TV show, you can have the entire script. So I want to remind people that if you ever want to know about every word in a show, the script is available for every TV show we've ever made. And just last week, we put up Iceland. You can watch Iceland and you can download the script and you can have the name of all of these waterfalls and all the other information right there.
Continuing west, the barren plateau gives way to the green oasis of Lake Myvatn. Ringing the lake is a wide variety of volcanic landscapes. Compact and accessible, Myvatn feels like Iceland's Yellowstone. Along the lakeshore, these pseudo-craters are giant burst bubbles of molten rock, stopped in time. At these pinnacles of lava, called the Dark Castles, families and hikers love exploring a maze of trails between fanciful landforms. And looming over the lakeshore is a perfect volcanic ash crater. Bizarrely beautiful, like visiting a moonscape, it's one more indelible memory that comes with driving the ring road. Nearby, the geothermal activity keeps on simmering. Visitors wander through this mind-bending, almost Martian landscape. Mud puddles bubble and steam. Fumaroles hiss like tea kettles. The terrain is brushed in vivid colors. And everything reeks of sulfur.
You know, when you come to a place as unusual as this, the real challenge for a travel writer is figuring out how to capture this sort of sense of awe and wonder and the essence of a place, and then translate that into words.
Nearby geothermal plants harness all this volcanic power for heating and to generate electricity. And even here in the far north, Icelanders use their endless hot water just for fun. The Myvatn nature baths, overlooking this steamy volcanic landscape, are a popular place to unwind in warm water tinted with natural minerals. The landscape changes again up along the north coast.
The ring road itself is a scenic spine around Iceland, but if you just stick to Highway 1, there's a lot you might miss. That's why if you have a good guidebook, you'll know which of the side trips and detours are most worth the extra miles.
And one of those is Husavik, with its salty and picturesque harbor on a protected bay and a proud fishing heritage. Today, a stop here educates visitors about Iceland's whales. The Husavik Whale Museum displays the bones of whales that have washed ashore from around the island. The lovingly displayed skeletons teach visitors about these magnificent mammals. The star of the show? An 80-foot-long blue whale with a rib cage as big as a truck. For a chance to watch living whales, out on the harbor, visitors choose between classic fishing boats or, for a little more adventure, high-speed inflatables. Whale watchers suit up and prepare for the journey. Tourists climb on board, excited for the possibility of a close encounter with a gentle giant. If they're lucky.
By the way, sorry to interrupt again, but I'm just so thankful for the artistry of our editor, Steve Camarano. Steve sits in our little studio here in Edmonds, and he lovingly takes all the footage our crew brings home and edits it artfully into these programs. And I love music. I really appreciate music. And one thing I really like about music on TV and movies is you're not aware of it, but you're enjoying it. It's doing what it's supposed to do. And that's not accidental. It's very carefully put together in a painstaking kind of way. For example, I just love the music in these shows, the way that it enhances the viewing experience. Steve doesn't let the slap of a whale's tail go without tying it in with the music. So in a moment, you're going to see a whale's tail slap, and it happens to coincide with the cymbals on the piece of music that he chose to run then.
They may come home with happy memories of breaching humpbacks and curious orcas. Continuing across Iceland's north, the coastal road curls around the Troll Peninsula, with sweeping vistas toward the Arctic Circle. At the tip of the Troll Peninsula sits the historic fishing town of Siglufjordur. The mountains at the mouth of the fjord protect the little harbor. And behind it is an endearing museum that tells the story of how around 1900 this became a boom town for herring. Visitors learn how these tough little boats caught mountains of herring, a nutritious and highly prized food. This herring harvest powered Iceland's fledgling economy through the first half of the 20th century. Cameron's learning more about the story from local guide Edda.
Tell me, why is it in this town, why herring? What's special about herring to this town?
So for the herring industry was for the longest time one of the biggest industries in the country for the most part of the 20th century, and for the longest time this town had the biggest herring port in Iceland, and we often refer to this as the capital of the herring. So we are located in front of a salting station, and from 1907 until 1968 herring was salted here. We had the women, the herring girls, salting and packing the herring into the barrels.
And so this table here is exactly where that happens.
Yes, so this is what we call the herring box. And the fishermen coming into the fjord would start by unloading the herring into those boxes, and then they would call out the herring girls for work, and they would take one herring at a time, cutting the head off and pulling the guts out. And then they would place the herring in here. They would do this until they had almost filled this container. Then in here they would mix it with the salt, and then finally sack it into the barrels. So this is where the herring girls would live, the women that would come from other places in Iceland just to work here at this particular salting station. This would be an example of their bedrooms.
Okay. How many herring girls would live in a room about this size?
So there could be up to 50 women living in the whole building, but at the busiest years they would have to share the beds, 2 to a bed, so there could be up to 12 women living in a room this size.
Tell me about their working hours.
When there was herring to be salted, they needed to be outside working. And so that meant that they could be working very long shifts. So it could be 20-hour shifts, and one herring girl we interviewed, she said that her longest shift by the herring box was 34 hours straight.
It's inspiring to see the thoughtful ways Iceland preserves and celebrates its unique heritage. Finishing the loop and leaving the coast behind, the road swings to the south. Along the way is another artifact of this country's rugged history. In this land where trees are scarce, houses were made out of sod. Glambear is a perfectly preserved turf house dating back centuries. The grassy roof waves in the wind as visitors admire the sturdy herringbone pattern of the stacked sod walls. Inside, an earthen corridor connects several rooms. Food was stored in wooden barrels. In the kitchen, meals were cooked over a sheep dung fire. The farmer's family had a spacious bedroom all to themselves. But the farmhands bunked in a communal living room. Workers slept 2 to a bed, tucked in by a wooden panel carved with prayers. Women, who did the delicate spinning work, got the bunks near the windows for the better light. People still lived here until 1947. Modern as Iceland is today, many grandparents remember growing up in houses like these. As the ring road winds its way back toward Reykjavik, there is time for one last scenic detour. A drive around the Snæfellsnes Peninsula offers a wrap-up of Iceland's dramatic natural wonders. Iconic peaks, sheltered fjords, frisky horses, glacier-topped mountains, swirling seabirds, climbable craters, and abundant waterfalls. In short, it's a microcosm of all the unique forms of nature that Iceland is famous for. This encore of Icelandic splendor caps one of Europe's great road trips. After 800 miles, the crew meets back up with me where we started, in Reykjavik.
Iceland may be a small country with a small population.
But it comes with a powerful sightseeing punch.
I'm Rick Steves.
And I'm Cameron Hewitt.
Thanks for joining us. Until next time, keep on traveling. Tell me a tongue twister in Icelandic.
Kirkjubæjarklaustur.
What is that?
It's a town.
You know, as more and more people discover this beautiful place, it's really more important than ever. Sorry, there's a fly right on my glasses. Okay. He was literally...
You better not be rolling with this hat on.
There's a blue.
There's a blue.
All right. Wow. I sure am thankful to be able to share this with all of our travelers out there. And Cameron, that was quite a trip, wasn't it?
Yep, it was a great trip in real life, and it was also a great trip to watch on video. I think it came out great.
That's great. Hey, thanks again, Cameron, for all the great work on that. And Lisa, I think we are ready for some questions.
Well, we certainly have had a lot of action in the Q&A. Before we get to our questions, though, could we please have a word from our sponsor?
I would love to share a word from our sponsor. Rick Steves Europe is happy to bring you these kind of travel thrills. And a few points. This program is just hitting public television right now all across the country. If you got friends that are interested, you can find it on your local public television schedule. I also want to remind you, anybody supporting public television at even the base rate, you get access to the PBS Passport app. The app gives you all the shows, but the Passport gets you behind the paywall, and every show we've ever made is there, and that is yours. And right now, the Iceland show is on the PBS app. So you can watch with that, and you can share with your friends. It's also available on our website at ricksteves.com in the TV section. Our Monday Night Travel crew is going to team up with our tour sales department to have special, we're calling them Tours 101 information sessions. And this is coming up on Thursday, next Thursday, August 22nd at 6 o'clock Pacific time. And it's just a chance in the Monday Night Travel format for people to just drop in and answer any questions and learn more about our tours. It's a huge, huge investment of time and money, a great deal of trust you have to put into the company that you're going to travel with. We take 30,000 people on our tours every year. More than half of them are return travelers, and it's because for the right people, our tours are great. For the wrong people, our tours are a miserable excuse for a vacation. So you got to make sure you know what you're getting into. And if you are curious, even if you're not serious about taking a tour or whatever, next Thursday, August 22nd at 6 o'clock, you can log on just like you did now. The link to that will be in the follow-up email we'll send you tomorrow, or you can find that at our on our tour site on our website at ricksteves.com. But it's simply sign up, get your name on it, and then you can click, you'll have the link, and you can join our staff. Lisa will be there, Gabe will be there, and Robin, who you've seen on a number of our shows recently, she'll be there also. She's great. Also, I would like to remind you that next Monday on Monday Night Travel, we're going to Dublin, and our very own Lisa Friend will be the moderator, and Stephen McPhillamy will be joining us from the Emerald Isle. It occurred to me I should remind you that I'm going to be out there busy making TV shows starting next Sunday. I'm flying to Paris. We're going to make a 1-hour special on Paris, the City of Light, and then we're going to go 2 or 3 hours to the east, and we're going to get on a barge, and we're going to do a TV show about barging in Burgundy with a gourmet chef. It's going to be kind of a twofer. It's going to be a lesson in fine French cuisine. We're going to go shopping in the morning, and I'm going to be sitting in there on the deck, luxuriating in beautiful French food and teaching as I learn. And we'll also be enjoying what I did with my girlfriend Shelley a couple years ago, probably the most luxurious vacation I've ever been on, a barge cruise on the canals of Burgundy with a gourmet chef. So that'll be a fun show. On my way home from that shoot, I'm stopping in Cincinnati. And on September 13, 14, and 15, I'll be performing with the Cincinnati Pops, an amazing orchestra. We're going to be filming it to make a 1-hour TV show about my symphonic journey. And if you're in the Cincinnati area and you'd like to join us, tickets are going fast. We'll have 3 concerts, and it's Rick Steves, Europe, a symphonic journey. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And then in another few months, we'll have it on public television. Those are your words, plural, from your sponsor. Okay, Lisa.
Thank you so much. So our first question tonight comes from Mary Ryan, and she wants to know, how are the drivers? She was in Norway earlier this year and found the drivers to be safe and polite, even on one-lane roads. Can she expect the same in Iceland?
Cameron.
Yeah, definitely. I would say there's very sparse traffic in Iceland. The roads are excellent. Even in the suburbs of Reykjavik, it's pretty mild by American suburban standards. Very easy place to drive, very comfortable place to drive. So I would say if you're comfortable driving at home, you're probably going to be comfortable driving in Iceland.
And as Icelanders will tell you, the dangers are not other travelers, it's nature. And you'll have little information posts like national park offices or something as you drive around. And I really enjoy stopping there. And you'll be taught safety on the road with nature and what threats are coming up, and if there's any eruptions or hot lava to avoid or storms or whatever. But it's quite a wild natural situation, and that really is much more dangerous than the kind of traffic you'd be concerned about in a big city.
Someone in the chat said that they had to sign something that said if the wind blew their rental car doors off. You know this, Cameron. Will you explain this?
Well, it's the wind in Iceland is severe, so there's a few different hazards. One is there are people who open their rental car door and don't realize how hard it's blowing, and literally it'll turn your car door inside out or knock it off. There's also the danger of sandstorms. There's a few parts of Iceland where if the wind hits just wrong, it can actually take the finish off of your car. And so you either have to sign a release, or in some cases you can pay extra for sandstorm. I think, Rick, you told me once you were offered sandstorm insurance and you were quite sure.
Yeah, and I parked the car at the ferry to go to Westman Islands, and it was a concern. I had to think, where am I going to park this car to be in the lee if there's a storm? And I've been in my car in Spain. I mean, it can be windy anywhere in your travels, and these are little rental cars, and you open the door and the door just flies, not off, but it bends. So be careful.
That was the sailor in you coming out in the leeward side.
Oh, baby. Don't get me started.
Mira would like to know, what are the prominent cultural differences that set Iceland apart from other Nordic countries, if any?
I mean, I think it's partly just this culture of hardship and being on the frontier. They arrived around the year 870 or so, and these were sort of the farming cousins of the Vikings, Scandinavians, but they came to a completely uninhabited island, and they really had to have a pioneer mentality, and they always did. So there's this sense of, instead of, the Scandinavian countries where it feels a little bit more urban and there's some great cities and there's a little more cosmopolitan kind of air, I would say Iceland is very rustic, very rural. Until very recently, it was just basically a collection of isolated farms scattered over an otherwise uninhabited island. And I think that really has shaped this kind of mentality of being on the frontier.
And one thing I'd add to that is Iceland, more than any place I've ever been, is a big family, literally. I mean, they have one family tree. You've got a software program that you can trace every citizen of Iceland and see how you're related and how closely related you are. And that's something after a third or fourth date, a lot of people take a hard look at. And the togetherness, that familyness, I felt. I use this illustration a lot if you've heard me talk about Iceland, but I was walking home after filming one day, Cameron, and in the little playground at the cathedral, the swing set was a circular swing set, and all the swings were coming together. And I was just mesmerized by that because I loved swinging when I was a kid, but it was parallel. And here, they don't want to do the parallel. They want to come together, and it was emblematic of a community that's very, very strong.
That's so charming. CJ and a few others wanted to know, what is the nightlife like in Iceland? Are the pools open late at night? Is it safe for ladies, or do they do, as my grandpa would have said, and roll up the sidewalks?
The pools, some of them are open later into the evening. I would say Reykjavik has a very well-known nightlife. There's lots of bars with live music that are open late. In fact, on weekends, I would say if you're in Reykjavik on a weekend, be careful where you're staying, because if you're right along the main street through the downtown core, it can be noisy and rowdy late into the night. I don't think it's unsafe. I think among statistically, Iceland is one of the safest countries on earth. It's nothing dangerous, but people really know how to have a good time. And of course, again, there's that kind of, you have to get through the long, cold, hard winters. And so you better believe people know how to go to the bars and enjoy themselves on the weekend and blow off a little bit of steam, whether it's summer or whether it's winter.
And I think it's hard to overstate how safe Scandinavian countries are, Nordic countries are from a violent crime and a guns point of view. It's just, there's one bored policeman in each town, and I guess you have to have a policeman, and they keep people quiet if they're bothering people or whatever. But there's just not much concern. I mean, there is very rarely, but statistically, it is far, far safer than any place in the United States.
Iceland, more crime writers than crime.
That's true. Yeah.
All right, Alana wants to know, is renting a car and self-driving in November a good idea? Any areas to avoid, especially if not accustomed to icy roads?
Roads do close in the winter, and I'm not sure if it's November, probably is one of the months. There are times of year you really can't even do the whole ring road. Some of the sections of road just close entirely. If you're staying close to Reykjavik, most of the roads should be open most of the time, but yes, you need to be really comfortable driving on snow and ice. I think Icelanders get nervous about Americans, tourists coming over in the winter because we can be a hazard on the roads. I was in Iceland in Reykjavik with my parents once, and it was only mid-October, and we were doing a day trip to the Golden Circle, and there's two ways to go, and we chose the scenic route that went up over some nice hilly areas, and it was perfectly clear and sunny in Reykjavik, and we got about an hour down the road, and we came to some, a foot of snow on one of these little mountain passes that wasn't even very high by Icelandic standards. We had to turn around and then find another way back around to the main road, and it probably cost us 45 minutes. That was October, and that was on the Golden Circle, which is this really well-trod route. So you do want to be really well aware of the current road conditions. And Iceland does have an excellent website. I want to say it's simply road.is, but check that. There is an excellent Icelandic website that tells you up to the minute current road conditions for which roads are open and which roads are closed at any given moment.
And I just want to stress again, it is the weather. This is serious business when you're out and about in Iceland. The closest I've ever come to being literally blown off a breakwater was on the Westman Islands when I was researching there once. And I swear a gust of wind came, and I came just a smidge from getting blown literally right into the water. It would have been a serious problem. And I was just having so much fun, I forgot to be really careful about the worst scenario when you're out and about dealing with the weather.
Okay, Marissa wants to know, this is an easy question, I believe I know the answer. With all the layers needed to travel around Iceland, did you still both do carry-on?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What, you even ask? I looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy walking onto the plane with all my layers. That's what you do when you got a lot of layers. You wear them if you're carry-on. No, there's no reason to, if you're a good light packer, to take more than one bag. You layer it. Cameron will always remind you, you layer it. That's what you do. You don't have a bunch of different heavy outfits. You have 4 things you can wear that is the maximum weather for you. And that's really smart, because I found myself peeling and putting back on and peeling all the time.
And if you get cold, just buy an Icelandic sweater. It's a great souvenir, and nothing keeps you warm quite like an Icelandic sweater.
And then once you've made the deal, say, I'd like a hat with it.
I got one too, by the way, Rick.
There you go. Oh, that's nice, Cameron.
Okay, with that, we will go to our last question. So a couple people wanted to know, do you have any favorite hot pools with spectacular settings?
Cameron.
Wow, there are a lot to choose from. You have the premium baths, which is the really expensive, more tourist-oriented ones, like the Blue Lagoon. We showed you the Myvatn nature baths, which is a similar experience, that kind of lava rock spot up in the north. I really like that one. In terms of the municipal swimming pools, the local swimming pools, Boy, there's one in a town called Hofsås, which is up in the north, and it's very simple. It's just one big infinity pool, but it's perched up on a cliff overlooking a beautiful fjord. So you just kind of swim up to the edge and you just look out, and this gorgeous Icelandic fjord is stretching out before you. But there are so many great choices, whether simple community ones or premium ones. And I will say we've spent a lot of time in our guidebooks explaining the pros and cons of each one and pointing you to the ones that are nearest to your likely sightseeing and driving routes. That's one of the research tasks that I particularly enjoy. I like to actually go try out all these pools and baths and try to describe them so you kind of know what you're getting into. So there's lots of
I noticed that when I was looking at your work on Iceland. You love those thermal pools, and for good reason. Hey, Cameron, thank you so much for all the great work and the vision for this, and and guiding the crew all the way around the ring road. Lisa, thank you for wonderful moderation, and thanks to all of you for joining us. Every Monday, we're right here celebrating travel. 102 minutes ago, Lisa predicted that this would be a 100-minute show, and we just about made it. And I'm so glad we were able to run a little long. Thank you for your patience, because Iceland is a place to get to know, and the more you know it, the more you like it. Thanks very much. Happy travels. Good night, Cameron. Good night, Lisa.
Good night, Lisa. Good night, Rick.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.